Hello, everyone, and welcome to a special International Cat Day episode of Outside of the Box. And I am very excited to have Martin Mason of MadCatter joining me on the show today.
How you doing, everybody? I'll tell you what, it's International Cat Day. We're gonna talk about our itty bitty kitty project. That's what this is about, and maybe some Battlebots.
Yes, of course. We're going to talk about all of that and more. Um, so, uh, really exciting season last year. I definitely still consider Bad Catter to be one of the most underrated robots out there. I mean, even though I still think that you get a lot of credit as a team, but I mean, I think even still, like to me, underrated. Very exciting season. Started off the year against Yeti. And so this is kind of fun because like a couple of these matches I've already talked about from the other side of things, but the Yeti matchup, they were very aggressive as Greg tends to be. But there were a lot of issues that they had getting under you. And I think that kind of led to their downfall, and you were able to capitalize on that, including taking off a tire. I think Yeti was kind of not in the best shape after you got done with them. So let's kind of talk about your strategy in that matchup and kind of how it all shook out for you.
So let's see. I've known Christian for years, and if you go back far enough in history, season two, my daughter Katie and his daughter Carissa are like a year apart ish. My daughter would know exactly. And he was there with a two-wheel drive vertical spinner. I don't remember the name of it. And we were there with the original Bad Kitty. And we had I know we faced off in an all-girls rumble with Hannah driving. It was Ringmaster that time, and I can't remember the name of Christian's bot. But I'll say, Katie and Hannah and Carissa are all like best couple of years apart, so they spent a lot of time hanging out. And I'll say now, they're much older, and so times have changed. But I really enjoyed Christian. He certainly has been doing this longer than I have, and him taking over Yeti and kind of creating a new generation of it. But I'll say, the couple of years Yeti was gone really showed, didn't they? Because the game has changed. You've heard from a lot of people that ground game is kind of what's running everything, and Yeti just didn't bring that at all. They kind of made it easy for us, and you saw in that fight we won the encounters. We won it because of ground game. We won it because of tip speed. We were spinning faster than they were, and that was really fun for us. And I think it also it kind of set us up a little bit because I think Aaron had planned that, MadCatter's pretty durable. It's always fun. Who knows how they'll do? Maybe they'll win, maybe they'll lose. And when we just slaughtered them, right? Then he's like, okay, well, then it sort of set us up to face Sawblaze next. But I'll say, you know what? Yeti still hits really hard. We took a lot of damage in that fight. It generated lots of parts for eBay. Always a good thing. But I think more than anything, that was a really fun fight to watch. Even, it was okay. So maybe we were beating them up a little more than they were beating us up, but there was a lot of energy, a lot of big hits. And it was, that was first, second episode. Do you remember?
It was the second episode.
I don't, you can say I don't watch the show once it's been on. So, I lose track of those details, but that was a really good way for us to start the season. And, but I'll say, we that was a hard-earned win, but it did, it validated, number one, it validated the new weapon. We've done a lot of work on it, and I think people were surprised at how well it was working. I won't say that we were, because we had probably 400 hours into testing on it, and we'd build a whole test jig and we'd hit lots of stuff with it, but I think everybody else was surprised.
They may have been, because like you said, like Yeti is a great robot. Of course, that with them being out for a while, that's going to come into play. But yeah, I mean, it was a great fight all the way around. Great start to the season. So, but yeah, like you said, that that kind of led into the fight with Sawblaze. And speaking of the ground game, that was like kind of the opposite way, because
Yeah.
you don't want Sawblaze to get underneath you. And they were able to get underneath you. I mean, like Jameson is just so good. Like he's very surgical. He's very studious. Like he makes sure that he knows what he needs to do going into a match. And I really, for me, I think it was just a matter of that last year, aside from obviously a couple of matches, that was a season where he was very dialed in and very motivated to just get through those matches, and dominate. And that's what you kind of seem to run into with that.
I agree. Sawblaze was amazing. And I think we learned a lot from that fight. And I think for us, it was really nice. I considered Sawblaze to be a top 8 robot easily, and I think they ended up ranked. They better have ended up ranked there. I don't know, but I know they got ranked really high, and I think they well deserved. I know Calvin has driven against JMO a lot. They in the 3-pound league, and so that they're both really good drivers. It came down to, yeah, we didn't have the ground game. I just shipped some parts off to be made in China that are called Sawblaze is part of the prefix for the part. So they were definitely inspired by that. Some of what we did at Remars, and I do hope you get to watch that, was inspired by that fight, just things we learned from it. JMO was nice enough to give us some of the pieces we broke off of Sawblaze. And we studied them and said, oh, okay, we could do things like that. And it's funny, we sent those, we designed some parts based on that. We sent them to David from Malice to 3D print them, and he was working with the Scorpios folks, and those parts showed up on Scorpios. So anyway, there's all this kind of, I don't know what my fingers are doing, but there's all these connections in the community where ideas move around. But I think, yeah, that fight taught us a lot, but I think it also really showed our durability. We got just mauled repeatedly in that fight, and kind of kept going and going and going, until we were too broken to keep going. And but it wasn't like it was really obvious we'd been pretty severely banged up and bruised. It wasn't one of these donk and the robot stops. It was a pretty severe beating, and we love to lose like that. JMO earned every bit of that. And it kept us busy doing repairs afterwards. So we pulled the chassis out. We had a lot of work, bending and re-welding, and we do these steel welded monocot chassis that are all welded together. And one of the things we do is we kind of make sure we repair everything at the end of a fight. So that was a major endeavor, between our welders and being able to use the Lincoln equipment. But at least you're not bored.
That's true. It gives you a lot of stuff to do for sure. So,
and I don't think the fans were bored. Again, that was another fight where hopefully the fans saw, you lose the fight, but I've heard John say it too. That's how you want to lose a fight.
Yeah, absolutely. So, coming off of that, the next match was against Rampage, which, at the time, winless robot. In the pre-match interview, you talked about your strength of schedule, which certainly, was there. Win against Yeti. Yes, you lost against Sawblaze, but also it's Sawblaze. You were very aggressive in that match. You ended up, kind of popping them way up in the air, took off a huge chunk of their robot, and that was really all that there was to it. I thought that it was very nice, after the match, that you kind of gave props to their team, trying to put something together, like as a involving kids and have more of a family type of robot situation. I thought that was great. And like you said, it does show that, anybody who wants to do Battlebots and, wants to put something together can do it. So I thought that was fantastic.
Your 6-year-old, Katie started at 8, so they're getting close. And I think I think that fight was not our originally scheduled fight, and more kudos to Rampage for stepping up. And I think they had this great attitude of, we'll take anything you'll give us, Aaron, and here you get MadCatter's. Like, okay. So yeah, that was definitely a tough draw for them. And but they stepped up and put everything in. And I know after the fight, we spent some time with them figuring out how to get their robot back together. And you might see. I don't want to give any spoilers. You might see him again. Let's just say there's exciting things to look forward to for Rampage it coming up. So, but it was certainly a big job getting their robot back together afterwards, and they just dug in and did it.
Yeah, that's what you got to do sometimes. But yeah, so I mean, not necessarily the most exciting fight, but it was still cool to kind of give them an opportunity against a robot like MadCatter.
And I think the other thing is there was one great hit, which got the fight on TV. It didn't end up as a bonus footage or anything, and I think that's good for us. It's good for Rampage just to get eyes on the robot, and so we always want to deliver that some kind of TV spectacle. That's why there's a gassy cat that runs around with flame shooting out the back. Because ultimately this is we get Trey to set up a great big arena for us to play in, but for him to do that, he's got to pay the bills. So that's a part of it, is making something people want to see.
Definitely. So it ended the regular season 2-1. You get into the tournament up against Black Dragon. So that was an interesting rewatch for me, because I don't think that I felt the same about the match than the first time that I remember watching it. And I think that a lot of that was just because there were so many other like close or controversial matches in that tournament that overshadowed it, that it wasn't something that necessarily got talked a lot about. But you ended up taking off both of their front forks in that match. They were able to still get at you despite the fact that you did that. It was really a back and forth, very tough match, and it ended up in a split judges decision that didn't go in your favor. And I would say I normally agree with the judges' decisions like 99% of the time. They do a great job. And after I watched that, I was like, I'm not sure that I feel that way after watching it, especially with that. What do you think was the difference in that? And do you still feel like, yeah, there was a lot more Black Dragon parts in there? There was.
I mean, you heard me say that, and I think this is a case where if the judges had gone in there and looked, they would have seen that Black Dragon was basically a ruined smoking Hulk, and we were driving around and doing everything. And honestly, we had an unforced error in that fight where we overdrove our arm down, and that lifted our front wheels off, so we were having some mobility problems. But at the end of the match, we lifted the arm back up and everything was fine. So we didn't, certainly I think that we're really fortunate to have the judges we do. I'm going to say that. We've had some terrible judges on the show. And I'll go back to season 1, gosh, and season 2, but really since we've got the crew we have, they're all former competitors. I may not always agree with them. And I think there would be some benefit to doing post-match inspections and things like that. But, I also understand there is this real time pressure, right? That you got to get that decision out so that you can announce it. So because we got to get the next fight done. So I understand that. And, we did not have the good control. And again, unforced error on our part. We overdrove our arm and we're kind of running on our 2 rear wheels and skidding along on it. And that was just, getting kind of caught up in the heat of the moment. So it's, I don't have regrets really in that we got to go straight into the I call it the bounties, but the Smash Slam, Sin City Slay, whatever it is. And we had a great time, and we'll talk about that. I think again, Black Dragon was winning the ground game against us, and we ran the sword and shield, which was kind of a neat thing. We've never done that before. I don't know that anybody'd ever done something wacky like that, where we had a really long wedge on one side and a short one on the other. And kind of when we watched it back, we could see that we were getting under him with the sword and we were losing with the shield. So it was just, you know, but a bit of trivia about that fight. Black Dragon gave us the complete wreckage of their chassis after that fight. Their chassis was completely annihilated, unusable. Again, more to the damage, speaking to the damage that was done. So we've got that sitting out in the garden, and there's some gardenias in it. And but they're such super nice guys. We've competed against those guys. They come all the way from Brazil. We've competed up against them at Robo Games, and they're just really excited to be in the sport, and they always bring a lot of energy, and I think they have kind of a similar philosophy to what we have. They're call them a college team, and there's a bunch of students that are really engaged and involved in it, and they get better and better all the time. And I just, yeah, it's a neat group of guys.
Yeah, they are. They're an amazing team. I mean, it was so close. Like that really, I wouldn't have been surprised really either way that judge's decision ended up going. It's unfortunate that it did, but like you said, there were definitely some exciting things to come, that we're going to talk about. So, because I think, if you make it to that next round, then you're probably not going to do champions because you get so far in, and that you're not going to do it because you're probably done by that point. So yeah, I mean, you got to do this champions tournament. Very exciting. I don't know that I knew what to expect going into it. Obviously, they've done bounty hunters in the past. It's kind of a similar format in a lot of ways. But for me, at that first episode, and obviously we'll see how the rest of it goes, but that just really was a shot of energy, that I felt was much needed, and Mad Catter was very much a big part of that. We won't talk very much about that first match against Triple Crown because it was just very unfortunate for them that they couldn't get their robot going, and you did what you needed to do. You went in there and hit them, but there wasn't any fight coming back the other way.
And I think Todd's a really smart guy, and we talked to him quite a bit beforehand and a little bit after, and but some of it is just we run at least 4 receivers in the robot, and so there's massive redundancy on everything. And we've also kind of some of it is just he hasn't been around a while, and we've all experienced these types of interference problems, and we try to simulate what's happening in the box as best we can, and have all this redundancy. And we saw in his earlier fights, and even at the beginning he was driving around. So I was really excited. We want a better fight to make better TV, right? And I appreciate that Battlebots released that out on YouTube, and people are going to get to watch it. And I know Todd did a little video about what was going on, from their end. But it's just, it's really a shame. And Todd is local. He just lives about 45 minutes from me here, and is involved in the combat scene here. So these things happen, and it's a shame because there's a perfect, it's another one of these things. There's a lot of really good, perfectly good BattleBots out there that aren't going to be on TV. I'll say, whatever happened to Warhawk, right? There's a robot that is in perfect, there's 2 or 3 of them made, and they're just sitting there ready to get on TV again. And it's just they didn't rise to the level that production wants to keep bringing them on. So I understand there's a balance between bringing on new teams and bringing back kind of old favorites, and it's tough. I don't make those decisions, obviously, way above my pay grade.
I'm sure that it is tough because there's so many great robots, and it's like when I look at the field every year, and I'm like, oh, why isn't this robot in here or that robot? And it's just because there's only so many spots, and you have to try and figure out what's going to work the best. So it's nice that they had that opportunity. Unfortunately, just didn't work out, but it put you guys into that next round pretty easily against
Right.
Claw Viper, which was a really interesting matchup. I mean, that was very, aggressive on your end as far as towards them, what you were able to do. Which I think you have to be, because Claw Viper is so fast. So you can't really give them an inch because they can just move around you.
Yeah, and I think, so a couple of things. One is, there was the Defender Claw Viper fight beforehand, which was a fantastic fight. And, we Jason's local to us, and we fought his little he has a fairy weight version that bot is based on, and it was just amazing to see Defender do all the same stuff that this little 150-gram robot had done. And so I loved seeing that fight. And, Claw Viper got that great grab on the wheel and took off Defender's wheel, and that was kind of all of it. But that was a fantastic control match. And then poor Kevin has to face us. And Kevin, going back in time, Kevin was part of when we'd spun Warhawk off of our team, however many years ago that was. Kevin was part of that. He built Warstop, which was the mini bot, and that little robot kind of appears continually. It actually appeared a couple times this last season in different paint schemes. But I say Kevin is a dear friend. I bring his hydraulic cart to Battlebots every year, and we have an ongoing. He's up in Seattle, so I keep his cart during the year, and he has a special cart that's got 2x4s, wooden 2x4s stacked on it. Otherwise, the magnets would put about 1,000 pounds of downforce, and you wouldn't be able to remove the robot from the cart without a 6-foot crowbar. You can ask me how I know it's a 6-foot crowbar, because the 3-foot ones don't work. So Kevin is a really good friend. Kevin, again, Claw Viper doesn't have the ground game. He had those little wedges, but we kind of we were, how do I say it? We didn't. You don't want to wreck your friend's robot, because then you have to fix it. But it is still BattleBots, and I think if you watch that match really carefully, what's interesting is our weapon is actually spinning backwards for about the first 15 seconds. And I don't know, you probably didn't notice that, Christine, but in our very first hit, we hit down into him, and then we flipped it over and hit up the rest of the fight. But we do little things like this, Christine, that you're not going to notice unless you watch maybe you're going to go watch it again now and see if you can see that.
I probably will have to do that now. Yeah.
But we know he's fast, but we're fast also. You're probably aware that we're a pretty quick robot, and given the size of the arena, and particularly with that stupid Ono plateau that cuts the size of the arena down, the speed just doesn't honestly matter quite as much, because there's not enough space to drive around much. So it really puts, speed is still important if you're poking along at half the speed of the other robot. But when we're going 75-80% as fast as he is, there isn't the advantage that there might be in a bigger driving space. So we got a bunch of good hits on Kevin, and I think we unstuck him once. Maybe we had him stuck up on the side. I don't remember how that went, but we really wanted to kind of keep the fight going as long as we could, and Claw Viper was pretty darn durable. I was happy about that. I know I got a message from Kevin a couple of weeks ago, about all the damage he keeps finding, because he just put the robot in the storage, and so I keep getting these messages from him. Dang it, Mason. So, I think Claw Viper is one of those bots that it adds a lot of variety, and again, I'm so thrilled that they put Claw Viper and Defender up, so we really got to see a great driving match that was fun to watch and interesting. Because at some level, yeah, we drive a 4-wheel drive vertical spinner. We've done that since season 2. Essentially, we kind of went on this little detour through a hammer to be able to get our vertical back. But it's nice to see some variety. And I would like to see Trey do some things to try to make the playing field a little more even, not involving a plateau. But I've suggested things to him, like just weld 1/4-inch strips to the floor, and kind of force people to have a little more ground clearance. make the ground game less of a factor, and it would be something pretty easy to maintain and very quickly change the meta. But we'll see. It's going to be this sort of thing that when we get a new season, we'll get a message 2 weeks before. Okay, here it is. Here you go. And so again, Claw Viper was a really good fight for us. And again, one of those kind of, we always go through the robot, inspect everything. We want to be 100% after every fight. But it wasn't the brutality that we had in some of our earlier fights.
Yeah, very true. Speaking of brutality, there's a lot of things that I want to talk about with that Hypershock fight. All the way from their crazy WWE with a chair entrance that they came up with, especially for you, to just like seeing those prior matches and what they did, especially to Valkyrie. I mean, my goodness, like, so prior to that match, all of these things in mind, like, what were you thinking?
I think we saw the Valkyrie match, but the Valkyrie match was pretty short, to be honest. And Valkyrie kind of came apart, and I think Valkyrie, I've known Fred a long time and Leanne. We've seen them kind of all over the country. I've gone out to Motorama, and they've come to Robo Games out here. And they're really solid builders. Alex is also on that team and doesn't, I think, get the credit he deserves. But Valkyrie, it kind of got shafted by the plateau, just like all the other horizontals did. Let's just call it as it is. So they had a really tough season. And they were at every disadvantage going into that fight. And so, they did what they could, but watching that fight didn't really change anything for us. We were honestly hoping it'd go a little longer than however many seconds it ended at, because it was. I think our Claw Viper fight wasn't that much longer, but still, you just wanted to see a little more interaction there. And I think that to be fair, it proved to prove that Hypershock anti-horizontal wedge is really effective. Will and the other guys on his team have done a great job engineering that and really thinking about the geometry and how it deflects impacts, and it works super well against Valkyrie, and it works super well later on. So so with Hypershock, we knew it was going to be about the ground game. We had a lot of debate internally about what to run. It was really, were we going to run 2 of the swords and try to outreach Hypershock's long wedges? Were we going to run something more conservative and run the floppy wedges, or that we ended up running? And we ended up running those. It's a more conservative choice. We've run them a lot. Unfortunately, they were pretty beat up. And one of the things if you watch that episode, you'll notice, like in the first fight, the robot has one eye. And in the second fight, it has no eyes by the time we get to Hypershock, because we just, those wedges kept getting beaten up, and we'd go back and heat them up and bend them and grind them and wouldn't have time to repaint eyes on them because we're turning around the robot really fast. So we went in there with those wedges not in the best shape. I think in retrospect, we would have done a lot better with the sword, but that was the decision we made. And again, ground game is something we're really going to be focusing on. You're going to definitely see some different things from us next season. And that's it. Again, I hope Trey does change up the floor, and then those floppy compromise wedges will work great, because they really do a great job gliding over the floor and not getting stuck on things. That's what they're designed to do. So you watch the fight. Hypershock won the ground game almost every time. We did get some good hits on him. We got him flipped over. But one of the things we decided is, we were not going to leave him flipped over. We were just going to flip him back over and keep the fight going. And I think, you watch that fight, and it is definitely one-sided. But if you go on eBay, you'll see all the wrecked parts from Hypershock on that fight too. And so we did not give as good as we got, but we gave a lot, and they brought out a whole new robot for the next fight. So, it was, and we basically had to retire that chassis. It may be up on eBay at some point here soon, but that chassis, it had been through Saw Blaze, which was a lot, and then after Hypershock, it was just coming apart. And that was our seventh fight of the season. There is an accumulated damage that happens, and we do a thing where we kind of bounce back and forth. We're doing 3 fights in a row, so we ran the more damage chassis against Triple Crown. We ran the better one against Claw Viper, and then we were back to that one for Hypershock, just because that's the one we'd had time to get ready. Because fortunately, with a lot of students, a lot of labor, we kind of have a crew working on the robot while we're kind of taking the other one out to fight, so we can always have something prepped and ready to go. We're used to turning around a robot in we just did an event in Houston where we were turning the robot around in 30 minutes to do another heavyweight fight. That's a very different world than most of the BattleBots teams live in. And so, we lost the ground game, but if you just look at, we just kept going and going and going, big hit after big hit. And, that was a spectacular fight for both of us. And I think you could see how happy we were at the end of it. Just that, that our robot was basically, people don't really appreciate this. There's been a bunch of fights of our robot where you've probably seen it break into pieces, and the individual pieces still keep moving around the arena. And I think people don't quite understand what kind of level of durability we try to, and redundancy we build in. So we were really happy with that. And, we also kind of, again, that every time you have a fight like that, you find new weaknesses in the robot, and you do to some extent always end up fighting the previous season, right? You're like, oh, well, if we go back 2 seasons ago, we fought Rotator and Tombstone, and you fought all the big hitting horizontals, so we better spend a lot of time on that. So for this season, we'd spent all of our development time preparing for horizontals, and we didn't see a single one. So we kind of, it's where you put your energy. So, this season we're going to be preparing to fight lots of verticals, and then who knows, maybe that means we won't see any, but hard to believe because there's so many of them out there, right? So just the end of the fight, you can see our energy is super high. I hope we've coined a new descriptor of being hyper shocked, and you asked about Will and the other guys doing their vignette at the beginning. That was so much fun. I was really hard to come out with a straight face afterwards and do our thing, but they honestly just did that pretty much all impromptu. And you're going to see more shenanigans. Well, hopefully, there's more shenanigans in store. Let's just say that you haven't seen the end of it.
That's good. I'm a big fan of shenanigans.
So anyway, we'll see what they decide to show. There's definitely been a lot more filmed. But kudos to Hypershock, and I think I voted for Hypershock for best engineered robot way back in I think 2019. Hypershock is a robot that has not performed up to its potential until now. So I kind of think we're like this good luck charm. When we fought Tombstone was at 100%. Oh, you got a buddy.
Yes.
All right. And what's this buddy's name?
Her name is Griffin.
All right. Hello, Griffin. Well, you look more like a cat than a bird, but we'll take it. So just, Tombstone reached their full potential at us, and Hypershock reached their full potential. So that was fantastic for them. And then to see him go on, and I know John said that he knew he was going to either fight us or Hypershock. And we were pretty confident, we were hoping to get a chance to fight John, so we'd finally get to try our horizontal attachment and see if it worked. You want to test stuff, otherwise it just gets packed up in the crate again. So we didn't get that opportunity, but getting 7 fights in the season in the 2 shows is fantastic for us. It lets us know that we're coming back. And this summer, I got a little bit of funding through one of our NSF projects to support a couple of students. They did research through the whole summer. That took us to Remars. You want to talk about that, or you have more questions about the episode?
Yeah, no. That was going to be my next segue, is going into Remars, just to talk about that experience, because I haven't, I know that it's, it's not the first time that they've done this event, but I have never seen it before, so I'm just really curious about that experience, because it has to be a little bit unique, because it's BattleBots, but it's still not exactly the same thing.
Yeah, I think it honestly, I think a lot of the teams, as did we, went there, looked at it as kind of an opportunity to test stuff for the regular season. And we knew we had to put on a good show. But it really we went there trying all new drive motors, a new set of ground scraping wedges. I mean, if the fights ever come out, you'll get a chance to see some of the things we did. And so we a lot of changes, which for BattleBots, you really can't do that necessarily. It kind of depends on your fight schedule. If you get a fight where you feel pretty confident, then you can do some experimental things. But we were running higher torque, lower speed drive motors. We were trying that. And we were running, we actually made a new weapon for the fight. We did a lot of things. A lot of things were done. And so, my two students were able to, they spent the summer. Oh, we also had done a lot of programming kind of under the hood of, can we cut our weapon spin up time by a second and a half. So there was a lot of stuff like that happened under the hood. And so the event is a lot more experimental. It's all your friends, right? You get to see, and honestly, we were really honored to be asked, right? They're asking the 8 best teams that are within easy driving distance of Vegas, which I guess is us. And so we were really honored to be asked. I think we would have, we would have liked to seen a little more opportunity to test the robot than we got. And I think the way our fight ended, if you do get to see it, you'll feel like, oh, what a bummer ending. It has to do with an arena failure more than anything. And I won't say any more than that. And I know at the end of the fight, folks from BattleBots came up and are like, yeah, we're sorry the arena didn't do what it was supposed to do. But that's that's it. And I'll say, we also, unlike BattleBots, we actually got paid generously. We
Oh,
got paid enough to fix everything that broke, and that's a really different experience for BattleBots. I'm sure you've heard from other builders about how challenging it is to fund the robots, and there's whole different levels. Our team, we have about a budget of about $10,000 per season to do everything, and that's typically about a third of that is paid for out of fight fees from BattleBots and our travel stipend and things like that. And then about a third comes from selling parts on eBay and other sponsors we get. And then the other third is just out of pocket. So it was really nice to get some money, to know that we had I still haven't, I better cash their check soon probably. But I still haven't cashed the second check, because I was just going to use that to pay for funding as much as we can of the new season. I've been able to buy lunch for my students, a lot of times, so that they're not just having to live on granola bars and top ramen while we do our 12-hour work days this summer. So having that support, I think all the teams really, really appreciated. So that's a big issue with BattleBots, and I know that Trey and Greg, the BattleBots folks, are really trying to do what they can to take better care of the builders. There has been this tremendous inflation in the cost of the bots. Hypershock a couple years ago put out that their budget was about $90,000. And so there's a big difference between a $10,000 season budget and a $90,000 season budget. And I base that from, looking at, they said this amount is this percent of our budget. And then I just multiplied to get that number. But I think, there are teams. I know David spent a lot of money on Malice the first season. He's kind of figured out how to keep things going since then and still have fun with it. But this is a tremendous challenge, particularly with new teams coming in. There's some new teams that are coming in, and working with them and advising them how this is going to cost you your first season tens of thousands of dollars, and how are you going to do that? Getting sponsors is something that requires a tremendous amount of effort. There isn't just a pool of money, guys. There isn't a build. They're not giving you money up front. That went away after ABC. So, it was that was a great thing about Remars. Honestly, it was so nice that it was a short event. Oh my gosh. We showed up Wednesday night. We were done by Sunday. It was just a long weekend. And that was great. We got to have it was just kind of the best of both worlds. And you can't make a TV show that way. But getting to see all your friends, getting to hang out at the hotel till 3 in the morning, chatting with people you only get to see 2 or 3 times a year. We do other events with people, but and we see that crew. We don't get to see the people from far. Totally starstruck by Aaron, and so they got a fanboy over him. Am I cutting out or am I still in, Christine?
Oh no, you're good now. You're good.
Okay. So yeah, it was a wonderful experience. I think way more some of the way more fun than BattleBots because the stress isn't there.
That's I'm sure that that's a big factor. Because I've heard that, from multiple folks that I've talked to, because I've often talked about, I'd love to go to BattleBots and see the taping and everything myself, which I still would love to do at some point. But I mean, like I was talking to Jameson about, like NHRL and saying like, hey, that's a totally different environment for the fans. You can get way more up close. There's a lot more going on constantly to, from a fan experience. And even with Robo games coming back next year, I mean, like there's all of these different things. Of course, BattleBots is a very unique experience and it's fun. And obviously I love it. But there's a lot out there.
Yeah, and I think the BattleBots in Long Beach. I think we actually did a really good job with fan engagement. We did a lot of we did meet and greets with the crowd every time we were fighting, and so there was a lot more of that. I think the Vegas venue being a little smaller and it being stupid hot outside kind of cut into that. I know the builders are trying to bring some of that back because people are going to go. I think in Long Beach we tended to get a lot more local people. We did have some people traveling, and I think Vegas we're getting a lot more people traveling. They're taking a plane flight to get there to see BattleBots, and so it would be nice to make it a much bigger experience. We have to balance that, of course, with I get to luxuriate with having 8 or so people there, so I can go hang out with fans and and do all that stuff, and still know that there's going to be people working on the robot, making sure it's ready. And I think a big part of my role at BattleBots is to kind of run interference between production and my team, so that they can get the robot ready. And because there is this whole making a TV show side, which can be, like Joe on Smee, it's pretty much he's a one-man show. His dad's there a little bit, but he gets pulled in all kinds of directions, and so a lot of people pitch in to help him. Um, so Remars, a lot of fun. Paid the bills. Hopefully, it made some, helped Trey and Greg kind of keep the arena going. I know the floor looked great. I hope I can say that much. It looked great when we started. I don't think it was that bad when we finished. And anything we can do to kind of keep BattleBots in the popular consciousness. It's got to keep being on TV. It went away for quite a few years there between Comedy Central and ABC, and it was tough with keeping things going at Robo Games and just losing a lot of energy and a lot of traction. And I think it's just now it's building and building and building. It's harder. It's a little harder with the way things are metricized, right? Where our Nielsen numbers have been really flat, but that doesn't account for Discovery Plus and how everybody's actually watching this is on the streaming channels, not on live TV. I have a couple of friends that watch it live, but they're in they're I'm in my 50s, they're in their 60s. It's only ancient folks like us that are still watching live TV. Just be honest. So it's hard the metrics are a little harder than they were before, but I think the fan base is growing in a way it hasn't been. So Remars was great. do you have other questions? Do you want me to talk about Houston and talk about robotica there, or what else have you got for me?
We can talk about that, and I definitely want to talk about the the stuff you do for the fostering and cats and things
Sure.
like that, because it's outside of BattleBots, but I still think that it's so important and it ties in so heavily to like the theme of your team and your robot.
Right.
And I think it's great to like be able to use this as a platform for that, which is such an important thing. I mean, myself as somebody who has two cats that I've adopted myself. There's so many cats out there that need homes, and a lot of people don't realize like cats are great. They're such
I
nice,
agree.
loving pets, and like I just think it's important. So yeah, we can talk about that.
Cats are great, and I think we going back to the first time we were on Bounties. We cleared it with production that we could put Adopt but Don't Shop on the back of the robot, and I'll give full credit to Shay from Jackpot. We got it cleared there. She had a vinyl cutter in the pit. She cut big letters for us, and we put them on the back of the robot. And that comes from my daughter has been cat fascinated her whole life. We've had cats, and it really was starting right before the pandemic that we got really involved in fostering. Our local animal shelter has something which is literally called the Itty Bitty Kitty Project, and we named a robot Itty Bitty Kitty that we used to promote that. And it was an insect weight robot, and it had a lot of fights, and it's a little fairy weight that had a flaming cotton puffball that would float. My face just disappeared like an anglerfish. And so cats love puffballs. Flaming puffballs have got to be even better. So we ran that, but also fostering the cats, and Katie gets a lot of credit. During the pandemic, we really did have a crisis where the shelters were forced to shut down because of everything except essential services. So they didn't have the ability. In the LA basin, they estimate during the season, which is the season's pretty long here because the weather's nice. But at our humane society, we get about 2,000 kittens a season, and they don't have space for that many. So getting fosters to come in, and honestly, you're going to get a kitten that needs a lot. We tend, the first couple of times, you just get ones that need food and loving and petting, because kittens need socialization. They need to be petted for like 2 hours a day, just so they get to know that people are good and that they want to be around them. But there's a lot of kittens that come in that are dehydrated or have worms or have medical conditions, and so my daughter really took that on, and both her and another one of our teammates, Alan, he's the one with his arm way up in the air in the picture here. I'll see if I can I point to it. No, my head will just disappear. Anyway, his girlfriend Marie really was a champion. She between us, we fostered about 12 kittens during the pandemic, which just means kind of a continuous string. You have them for about 6 weeks or so, but you really can only take one or two at a time because they're socializing, and they have to they need individual attention. And I think that's the thing to tell people. If you see kittens on the street, don't assume that they're abandoned, right? That maybe the mom is out hunting. It may be something's going on. Before you do anything, kind of watch for 6 to 8 hours and kind of see what's going on, because unfortunately, one of the things that happens is people take kittens away from their mothers, and that causes a lot of trouble because kittens can't really feed themselves. They can't have bowel movements. Hope I'm allowed to say that.
Yeah.
Before they get to be about 5 weeks old. So it's really important that a lot of times people want to help, but work with one of your shelters. If you do see cats, monitor them for a while before you try to intervene. And again, it's a wonderful thing. My mother has fostered kittens during the pandemic. She's going to be 82, and just for her, it's been a tremendous sort of way to bond socially and feel connected when we were really isolated out there. So we continue to be involved in the Itty Bitty Kitty project, and it's something we're going to keep doing. And right now we have Ira, which is my daughter named her Ira, short for irritating. And we have Booster, and we have Maybe. So we have three cats, and we actually have, my mother has one, and Katie has one. Oh, and Marie also has. Marie tends to get the really hard cases. So when you'll see pictures of us, we actually one of the fights we had a one-eyed cat, and that was so you'll kind of see. BattleBots doesn't always show all of our promos that we do, but Marie, kudos to her. She really takes on the hard cases, and she's made a tremendous difference. So, and if you can't take in kittens, a little bit of money goes a long way. With the fostering project, they do provide food, and they provide litter boxes, and they provide veterinary care. So, if as you're taking care of cats, you learn about dehydration. That's one of the big enemies of kittens. And then subcutaneously hydrating them, or just first starting off with droppers on the tongue. But there's things you can learn to do to take care of kittens as you get more and more excited about it. So it's something that's really rewarding. And I know Katie's home with Ira right now. And Ira will be with us until she's. The idea is to get them into permanent homes, right? So we do have the some permanent cat is Maybe, but we want to constantly get the fosters out there when they're about 10-12 weeks to go to a permanent home, and make sure they're fat and happy and all those things. So yeah, any other questions about that?
Not really. That was, mostly what, just to kind of hear about it, because I think that people need to kind of know about that and just realize it's an important thing. We love the two that we have. They both came from very great foster homes themselves, and I have to tell you, because this is just funny, that our younger one, the one that I was holding up, Griffin, we affectionately call her Gassy Cat, because she'll just come up onto your lap, and then like all of a sudden it's like, okay, I guess that's
Yep.
what we're doing right now. So that's, yeah.
Gassy Cat is real. I don't know what to say. That name did come from personal experience. So and it'll be interesting. Gassy Cat, we're hoping Gassy Cat come back this year. There's going to be some rule changes that affect mini bots, and we'll kind of see what happens. It may really hinder the ability for teams to run mini bots. And mini bots kind of have been a fun thing. The cute little mini bot with Kraken, Gassy Cat. And honestly, Gassy Cat has been decisive in some fights. You've seen Gassy Cat tee up other robots. So it's not just a gimmick. It's a gimmick, but it also seems to do things from time to time. But a lot of times, Wally is just a cute little guy that runs around, and the narwhal gets knocked off. And going back to Complete Control, Derek ran some potted plants. If you go back that far, now you're gonna have to go search for that. But just fun things. Part of BattleBots is, can we keep some of the fun? And as it gets more and more competitive, and the robots get more and more destructive, it's harder to bring a robot that's just kind of having a good time. And I think that's what people love about Rusty is, Rusty's first season, he just got out there. He was obviously having a great time. And I think that pandemic season, a lot of the really competitive teams weren't able to compete because of COVID requirements and, those sorts of things. For those of us that were in Long Beach, and it was local for us, and we were able to put into place some COVID procedures. People, I wouldn't have wanted to fly across the country in an airplane full of sick people at that time either. So I don't blame the teams making that choice. For us, it was just a quick drive. So I think Rusty was able to get in at a time when there was a chance. But if you look at last season, what happened to poor Rusty, and it's getting harder and harder for new teams to get in, as you saw Yeti being out just a short time, and how tough it was for him. So I worry about, what can we do? Can we have a farm league? Can we have, maybe there's a BattleBot special where it's all rookie teams, something to kind of give those rookie teams a chance to prove themselves and not just get annihilated.
Yeah, that's a great idea, and I think something that could be considered, because I think that there's a lot of teams that have put together some interesting robots, and it would be great if they could have those opportunities. And unfortunately, in the the big leagues, there's only so many robots that can get in. So it would be nice to have that additional opportunity for some teams that are, kind of looking to get in, but maybe they're not there yet.
And that's why it's great that events like Houston happen. And talk a little bit about that. The Houston area robotics group. I'm not going to get their name right, but something like that. Put together Robotica, and they worked with the Florida folks to bring that heavyweight arena. And we really ran that as a heavyweight sportsman event. So if we were Happy Catter there, we changed the robot. We really ran it as we ran the paw. And but we had a lot of fun with the paw. And one of the things you'll notice in our fight, if you look at the triple crown flight, at the end of the fight we kind of tap them with our paw and then try to lift him up a little bit to see if we can get him going. It is a very cat-like robot if you watch for those behaviors. The way Alan handles the paw, he's a big cat lover. He and Marie are the ones that do a lot of the fostering. So Houston was a chance for us to that was so much fun going there. Those fights are some of them are going to be on YouTube. It's going to be very amateur because we're all there just having fun. But I'll say we're getting to do. I think we had 5 fights scheduled over the course of 2 days, which is a much faster pace than you do at BattleBots. But getting to see Fuzzy there, and we'd seen Fuzzy with Texas Twister a couple seasons ago, but we hadn't seen him since. And Craig brought Slammo out there, and Slammo had a tough season. I think they went 0-3 last season. I hope I'm not saying that wrong, Craig, but he did great, and it was good to see Slammo working really well. And then Charles brought Sadbot, and which is his robot that always beats Overhaul, that he never runs in BattleBots. And Sadbot did its thing spectacularly well. And it was a chance for some new teams to try things and kind of get some footage to show that they could work. And it also kind of put pressure on teams. Hey, here's a deadline. There's an event, July 15th. You've got to have your robot there to compete. And so I think, big kudos for those guys putting it on. And if you've seen one of the Norwalk events, there's a lot more going on. There's 3 pounds, 150 grams, 1 pound. We were also running 12 pounds, 30 pounds, a little bit of everything at these events. And locally, that's something I want to talk about. I've been running events in Southern California. We have SCAR, the Southern California Attack Robotics League. It's been around for a long time. And we run events almost every month. And we've got an event coming up next weekend. It's at one of our local maker spaces. And we run big events and small events. Our small events will have 20, 30 robots, and our big events will have 100 plus robots at. But it's kind of this, if somebody's going to try to build a heavyweight, they probably should build a Beetle first and, get some stick time in and kind of see what people are doing and why they're doing it, and get a chance to meet builders. And that's honestly how I started. I've been doing this 11 years now. But I started building ant weights and beetle weights and competed in the insect classes for a long time. And you learn a tremendous amount. You learn what you're good at, you learn what you're not good at, you learn what's important, you learn what works. And then I kind of built up, to 12 pounds. We run a 15-pound league for high schools and technical colleges. And, part of it is trying to seed the next generation of builders. If you look at Glitch, Moody, and Kyle, both Moody was one of my students here. Kyle was involved in our 15-pound league. And so Kyle won our 15-pound league with something that looked kind of like Glitch. And Moody sent me a message saying, I'm going to build a BattleBot. He transferred off to Berkeley. And I said, don't do it. No, you'll ruin your life. And yeah, so there you go. So he's, I know you've had Moody and Kyle on, and, just so it's kind of like, there's got to be a next generation. It's got to be young kids like Kyle and Moody that are going to do this next. The Will and E-Man and those guys are kind of the middle group now. And we need these young guys who have lots of energy and new ideas to and kudos to Kyle for doing that. He learned a tremendous amount doing the 15 pounds and Beatles with us. And Moody being part of our organization here, that kind of gives them something to really start with. And I was not as surprised by Glitch's rookie season as some people, because I knew the people and I knew what they'd done beforehand. So I think coming from that background gives people a huge leg up. And we've got to have those opportunities for people. So Robo Games, I am so thrilled that that's coming back. We'll be running Catastrophe there at Robo Games, and we're also going to get around 120 pound. And boy, the 120 pound has been out of retirement. It's been in retirement since Robo Games went away. That's a robot I built with Alex Horn from Sub-Zero. Alex was the driver for Sub-Zero for a couple years. And Alex has kind of gotten out of combat robots just because he kind of graduated from college and started working. So I'm really hoping, I think we're going to be able to lure him back and get him involved again to run the 120. And you kind of get Robo Games is just such a fun experience. It's really fun for fans because there is so much going on. There is, there's not just the 6 weight classes of combat robots, but there's humanoids and there's all these just much more programming driven competitions. I honestly, the way I started was doing humanoid robotics, and my research was in humanoid gaits and looking at what can we learn from looking at remediation of people doing physical therapy and how they relearn to walk, and can we apply some of those principles in teaching automated systems to rock, and machine learning and gates. So that's totally different than just blowing stuff up, which we do now. But I was at Robo Games to do humanoid robots, and that, and also we had some autonomous navigation competitions we were doing. But seeing the combat robots, seeing Ray and Matt compete, and just I said, we got to do this. This is, and my students, Tommy is still around. He's been with me since the beginning. He was a young freshman at that point, and we're there in whatever year it was, 12 years ago, and we're watching the heavies at Robo Games, and he looks at me, he's like, why are we doing this autonomous navigation? What? We're not doing it. We got to do this. So we built up slow, right? It took us years to move into the heavyweights. But I think going slow, you is how you kind of learn all the things that you need to do to be successful. And we're still a pretty conservative team. We have to build within our budget. That's always a consideration. And I think we owe tremendous, just like I try to mentor new teams, I owe a big debt to John from Megabyte Gigabyte. He's the one who really pushed me into doing heavies. I was doing, we actually, to give the quick version of the story, you probably heard versions of it, but E-Man and E-Man Creo is a sort of hidden member of Team Bad Kitty. He honestly does probably 85% of the design of the robot. He was there last year with Big Dill, and he was, there. You didn't get to see him much yet. Just wait. But he's really a hidden team member, and he and I met at AVC, which was another event that Casey Coons from Copperhead ran, or Poison Arrow. I think it was called Poison Arrow at that point. And E-Man and I met there. One of these late night conversations that goes till 3 a.m. in the hotel bar, about we should build a heavyweight and maybe we'll get into BattleBots. Maybe we won't. Maybe we'll just run it at Robo Games. And we decided we were going to do it. And then because of John's recommendation, him, knowing us, knowing what we could do, that's how we were able to get started going to TIFR, the first Chinese show, based on the strength of his recommendation. And then we got, we had the robots built, and we spawned off Warhawk with E-Man up there in Seattle, and the Robs and all the rest of the War group, and those guys do a tremendous amount of outreach. Those guys have been running combat robot events nonstop since the Comedy Central days. They're running 4 events a year at the Seattle Center. I would say most of us in SoCal have flown up there to compete, just because the events are so much fun, and they run events with 100+ robots about 4 times a year. They don't do the I'll say none of us do the big TV the way the Norwalk event does, and that's because, my events are run by me, and Brad helps out and Tommy helps out. You'll kind of see a lot of the faces from the local teams there, judging and running the arenas. But that, Brad and Tommy and I aren't competing. We're busy running the event. And the same thing up at War. It's the Robs and Kevin and some of the same people you see on BattleBots are running the event so that we can kind of get the next generation to keep building. So I know that Norwalk is bringing a tremendous amount of attention, and I know he's putting a lot of money into trying to continue to promote more events. So I strongly support that. One of the things I know there's been a lot of efforts in the community to try to have standardized rule sets, and I think that's honestly really important. That if I think I've always really liked that I could build a robot and I could compete in Southern California, I could compete in Seattle, I could go to Motorama in Pennsylvania, run the same robot. I get a little concerned when there's one particular place that decides it needs its own rules and you end up building robots just for that event. I don't think that is as good for the sport as a whole. I think what Norwalk is doing on the whole is fantastic, but it would be really nice if they would kind of play with the rest of us, because there's a lot of us out here running 100 robot events all the time in our local areas. And honestly, Calvin has gone and won Norwalk, I don't know how many times, but and he's coming and he's good because he's competing in our events. And so we're growing all the builders. So I think there's certainly there's real value in us trying to collaborate. And I love working with the Seattle folks and the Moto folks to try to have standard rules, and we have some national organizations to do just that. So but I think this is an exciting time for combat robots, and people can watch Norwalk and see that you can start off with insect weights and have a lot of fun. I think the other thing that we've been running this next weekend, we're running a plastic ants and fairies only competition, and that tends to attract a lot of new builders. The plastic ants are you 3D print and you do a little soldering, and there's some folks out there that have got some products that make it really easy to do the electronics. And on the fairy side, E-Man again gets a tremendous amount of credit. He's put up a bunch of turnkey designs on Thingiverse where you just download it, you hit print, you put the motors in, he tells you what to buy, and you can have a whole robot built. So when you're thinking about your 6-year-old's going to be their 7th birthday's coming up, I don't know if you have a 3D printer yet, but either a 3D printer or the stuff to build a robot, and that's you can have so much fun with the fairies because they do bounce around and exciting stuff happens, but also you don't break the bank putting it together after the fight. And I think that's so important. Is the Hypershock fight cost us probably $3,000 in parts, and that's not something we can't afford to do that. Fortunately it's our last fight, hooray. If that had been in the middle of the season, we would have been in real trouble because we burned up a couple weapon speed controllers, and just a lot of stuff on the robot was heavily damaged. So that's something we need to grow the sport. And I think a lot of sports are popular because people do them, and they do them in school, they do them in high school, they continue. Soccer, football, American soccer, we'll call it, is really popular in our area. I'm afraid I lived in the UK and went to grad school there, so I have some habits. But soccer is really popular. People play soccer into their 40s and 50s and still continue to enjoy it. People play baseball, and that kind of they're both participants and spectators, and we need to make sure that can happen in combat robotics, that people can both participate and spectate. And with kids, robotics is huge in high schools, right? There's FIRST and VEX and all kinds of exciting competitions. People are doing that, and they finish high school and they kind of look around, what can I do now? Well, we're there. We are the perfect place for somebody who by themselves wants to run a robot in a competition. And we're seeing more and more kids come out of VEX, come out of FRC, and jump right into doing this. And they get they don't have to deal with a team. They get to kind of make all the decisions for better or for worse and come to competitions.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely couldn't have said that all better myself. Um, that's awesome. I mean, I think growing the new generation is so important. Getting younger kids interested in doing this and have them start learning, I think is very valuable. Obviously, I have a child who's interested in it. I think that's great. Um, so yeah, um, that's that's wonderful. I can't think of a better way to wrap up the show. Um, so yeah, I so appreciate having you on and like all your wealth of knowledge and experience and things like that you bring to the table. And I'm so interested to see what's next for Mad Catter.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's been amazing being on Outside the Box. We'll see you next time.
That I can't think of anything else to add other than subscribe, all that good stuff. The more that you do it, the more that I can continue doing what I do. Thank you again, and we'll see you next time.